Welcome back to the Token Intelligence Show. AI is changing the way that we work, and on this show, we will walk you through the state of the art with AI, cut through all the noise, and help you use wisdom to be a great leader and a great worker in this new era that we work in. And today we're going to talk about multitasking. This has been a subject that is valuable and interesting in the realm of work for, I mean, really,
for a long time.
For a long time. I think that it became more relevant in modern knowledge work, especially with digital interfaces, because you can run multiple applications at the same time, right? Even if you think about early computing, you put a single program, physical program,
right,
into a computer. And
yeah,
so
like on a disk.
Exactly, on a disk. And so I'm sure that people remember, older listeners remember doing that, where actually my dad talks about going to college and there was a computer for the entire campus, right? And
Right.
you would schedule time to go use the computer that was on the campus, and you had punch cards with the program on it, right? And then some listeners will remember floppy disks, and then, of course, compact disks or CDs. And so these are all, physical programs. But what's interesting is as computers became more capable and as interfaces evolved, you can run multiple applications at the same time.
Right.
And so this is
Windows.
Yes.
Right. Like
multiple windows.
yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, the operating system, right? Like that is one of the core innovations is multiple windows.
Yes, exactly. So it became very relevant, or it became even more relevant in that environment just because of the interfaces that we use to do our work, right? And I want to dig into how AI is changing that. But first, let's go back to the core of multitasking and what that means for us as humans performing work in general.
Yeah, because you just gave a nice overview of what it looks like with technology. But
Yep.
there's the human aspect of it that has nothing to do with technology. And I remember back to like when I first started working, ability to multitask was on a lot of job descriptions. And then it kind of went away.
Yep.
So I think we should talk about, and I think some of that is some science that came out around how our brains actually work.
Yeah.
And then that coming into the popular understanding, and therefore it kind of evaporated off of job descriptions.
Yeah.
But what's your memory around like the science around it, and maybe even just personal experience with multitasking?
I actually studied this, not formally in an academic sense, but I became really interested in this when early in my career. And my first job out of school, actually, I had a desktop computer. It was a Power Mac, which was very cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a Power Mac Tower with an Apple display plugged in. It was super cool.
So you still have that setup?
I still have that set, except for the tower. I do run a laptop, but I do have the Apple displays.
Right.
Yeah, I've been an Apple display loyalist for a long time. But then later on, I got a laptop, and so I could sort of take work with me, and then, started exploring a multi-screen setup, so having two monitors. And I remember, and also this was pre-Slack days, and so we still primarily used email for internal communication, and then live chat started to be used in the business place more.
Yeah, like Skype.
Skype, yes. So we use Skype. There was also Yammer. Do you remember this? It was Twitter for like inside of a company.
Yeah, I think Microsoft bought them.
Yep, and they did. Yeah, I think they did. And then Google Chat was actually used a lot of places that ran on sort of the Google Workspace suite. And I just remember feeling a little bit overwhelmed at like, okay, now there's email and now there's Skype, which we use, internally. And then the iPhone had just come out. And so this is 2008. So the iPhone's like a year old. And so people where I work, the following year, 2008, 2009, started to buy them because the price came down. And then now all of a sudden you have, email. Everyone has email on their phone.
Right.
And it created this environment where the form factor kind of made it feel like you could multitask.
Right.
But I started to notice that it was more overwhelming than productive,
Right.
for me personally.
Right.
And so that's when I started to look into it. And really, almost all of I haven't refreshed my research on this in some time. Actually, I did a little bit, which we'll talk about in the AI section. But all of the science points to the fact that multitasking is a net negative.
Right.
It creates a sensation of getting more done, but divided focus is generally a net negative. Whether that is taking, and there are two sort of main vectors, at least that I explored. One is that you may be trying to work on multiple things at the same time, but all of those things take longer, right? Yep. So in aggregate, you're not getting more done faster.
Right.
And then there's a quality impact too, because you're not focused. You can't do deep work on a single task, and
Right.
that's generally how you
Right.
draw out quality.
Right. Do you remember Scrum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the agile methodology
Yep.
pieces. So I read the kind of original book by one of the guys that came up with it. And one of the big components actually behind it was this multitasking thing, where he was essentially saying, like, based on the science, number one, you can only actually do one thing at once.
Yes.
You can rapidly switch back and forth between one thing, but you can't actually multitask. That's not for a human. That's not a thing.
Yes.
Your mind doesn't work that
I
way.
think that is actually a great fundamental point that I missed, is that
Right.
it's not multitasking, it's context switching. You
Right.
literally cannot
Rapid
work
context
on...
switching is multitasking.
Yes. You
essentially.
can't do two things at the
Right.
same time.
Right. But I still remember a graph from that book where he shows, let's call it, I don't know, several different tasks, like task A, B, C, D, and then shows on a timeline, like A to B to C to A to B to C, 6 months. And then he shows like just A, done, just B, done, just C. And it shortens the time.
Yep.
And essentially that was part of the research that he had as part of some of the fundamentals in the, whatever you want to call it, the methodology.
Yep.
And that really stuck with me, beyond just project management methodologies or methods of working.
Yep.
It's like, oh, if we have these blocks and we get to done, is way better than like half, come
Yes,
back and
exactly.
do the next half.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's another really good book that touches on a lot of these subjects. The book is called Personal Kanban.
Okay. I don't know that one.
And it's a great book. I highly recommend it, because it talks about throughput. And so, a lot of this kind of goes, it is very much in the realm, although, it's personal, right? And so it talks about, it's more about personal productivity,
Right.
but it extends to team contexts.
Right.
But it's very much in the realm of the Phoenix Project,
Oh, sure.
and then sort of going back to the goal and, a bunch of the books that the Phoenix Project references that sort of talk about manufacturing and throughput, right?
Right.
And personal Kanban touches on this as well, right? Where you limit work in progress.
Yeah.
And so
exactly. Yeah.
what is being worked on, you can only have one thing being worked on at a time. And they generally recommend, making it literally physical. So they, they're big on sticky notes.
Sticky notes, yeah.
Which is tough in a remote work environment. But, that way if the rule is you can only have one sticky note in the column, you actually have to physically make sure that's the case. So multitasking is bad generally. I would say that this is a big problem before AI.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably the silent killer of productivity for a majority of people who I know who work in a digital environment.
Right.
Not tech, but just generally I'm using computers, technology, whatever, right? It erodes it at an extreme level, actually, scientifically. So it can lengthen trying to multitask can lengthen the amount of time it takes to do something dramatically.
Yeah.
So it can take a 20-minute task and make it an hour or even multi-hour task, depending on the complexity.
So you talked about 2008. So let me
Yep.
fast forward us to 2018.
Yep.
And it got worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where essentially, like, yeah, you have mobile, yeah, you have your desktop, and then you have Slack or Teams.
Yep.
And essentially, if you have, and you're still have email, if you have notifications on all the time, then you would be
Yes.
interrupted every 5 minutes or more often. And this is pre-AI, but the work still was focused work. You thinking, whatever your job is, like trying to think and like organize a project or trying to think and code or whatever.
Yep.
That was still the work.
Yep.
I think steering into the AI part, the weird fundamental change here is there's a lot of arguments out there right now for now that the fundamental work should be multitasking
Yes.
when it comes to especially coding and I think probably aspects of knowledge work.
Yep.
So I think that's fascinating. Like, have we not learned anything?
Well,
Or why does it differ? Like, why are people thinking about it this way?
it is because when you start to leverage AI in its full capacity, there's a sort of a break point, right? And I know that our listeners are across a very wide spectrum, right? I think most people start by using ChatGPT or Claude, and you open a chat and you have a long interaction about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say the next step is you realize that you can have multiple chats going at the same time,
Yep.
right? So like, oh, I can start a chat and talk about this thing. I can start a chat and talk about this thing, especially, you're just like, okay, well, I can actually sort of get multiple things going at once. And then I think the next step is realizing that it seems advantageous, especially if something's going to take a long time.
Right.
So I have a research task and it's going to take, Claude or GPT, just say 20 minutes to sort of run this long research task or something, right?
Right.
And so at that point you're thinking, oh, well, this is interesting. I can kind of game the system, right? So I could start 5 research tasks, irrespective of costs, but, I could start 5 research tasks and all this stuff could be going on while I'm working on something else.
Right.
And then I think, for those of us who have migrated from like a desktop or a web app interacting with GPT to more of a terminal-based workflow. And so I don't really write code for my job. I'm a writer.
Right.
But I use AI exclusively through the command line in my terminal because there are a lot of advantages to that, which we can discuss on another episode. But at that point, you really supercharge the ability to do a lot of things at once, because you can have as many terminal windows open as you want.
Right.
And you can have them all running at the same time, and you sort of break free from this interface challenge of having like multiple chats in the sidebar and like clicking around, right? You can have, people have, I easily see like people that I work around will have 10 terminal windows open on their computer, all running different AI jobs at the same time. And there are a couple things here that are interesting. One is that that just feels very natural based on the way that the tools work, right? And one of the things that you don't necessarily think about explicitly, but that's just part of the experience, is that it takes time for an agent to respond.
Right.
And so before, if you were working on something, let's say you were working on coding something, or I was working on a blog post, or you were doing research, right? So let's just talk about researching for a blog post, or trying to figure out, how to write a Python script to perform some sort of statistical analysis. You're going to go search on Google, you're going to, sort of read articles, scan here, scan there, go back and look at the code, run a test. You're sort of proactively driving this whole time, or you like take your hands off your keyboard and sort of stare up and think like, okay, how do I do this, right?
Right.
And so if we walk through that process, even in the first steps, now you're going to have your like AI go do the research for you, right?
Right.
So I'm going to describe the problem, and then it's going to go out and research. It's going to find all these blog posts, all this sort of stuff, right? And so instead of you being an active part of doing that, you're waiting.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and even if it's 3 or 4 minutes, like you kick off a task,
Right.
and it's like, okay, I'm just sitting here for 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
I kind of need this information in order to move forward. And so you get to a place where this multitasking modality feels natural just because of the way that the tools work and the latency of issuing, a prompt and then waiting on a response.
Yeah.
And so you end up, I think, multitasking in a way, so you add this layer of multitasking to the work itself, right? So to your point, you have Slack, you have, email, you have all these notifications going on, project management tools, which, by the way, turn all your notifications off. It's the best thing you can do for productivity. So you have that layer that's sort of eroding focus. And then now when you add AI into the actual work itself, it's a layer on top of that. And so
it's way worse.
It's way worse.
Way worse. The other one feels insignificant now.
Yes.
Like the notifications feels like,
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the interesting thing. I think it's the waiting right now, which will improve. Like AI is going to get faster.
Yep.
I don't think anybody's concerned about that long term. But the other problem is I understand the desire to have 10 things working at once. There is if you can have them working on the right things and doing good things, like that is a net positive.
Yep.
I think the problem is, and there's an interesting thing that happened this week I want to get to here. The problem is if you're having to constantly switch between the 10 things every 5 minutes, it's super costly.
Yep.
In the last month, there's been a lot of conversation around loops, which we could get into more. But the idea is essentially you having to intervene less and you getting it in a positive loop, trying to accomplish a goal, for example. But an interesting thing that I think it happened yesterday or earlier this week, Anthropic came out with, and there's other companies already doing this, something called Claude Tag, and the concept is using Claude inside of Slack asynchronously, giving it a task, it works, responds back, and then it can also read from the channel or the place that you talked to it in, and continue a loop down a path, which is different than having 10 tabs open from a workflow standpoint, and then just having to hop back and forth and feed it and be like, okay, that's good. I looked at that, I'll put yes. Like, by very nature, if you're using it inside a chat application, it actually, I think it would reduce that behavior. So that's an interesting thing. Like, A, we don't know what people are going to prefer necessarily. And then B, if we go more down this road of using our same interfaces where we talk to humans to talk to the AI, I wonder, the open question is how does that impact multitasking?
Yeah.
Right.
So I will be very interested to see how this plays out. I agree that that the form factor of, so we move from this, I have 10 terminal windows open, right? And I think we're talking about generally people who are 10 tabs, 10 windows, right? But people who have crossed this threshold of
people that have 50 Chrome tabs open.
Yes,
I mean, it's
exactly.
the same thing.
Yeah. But if you continue to invest in learning how to use AI, you will get to that place because you realize that there's potential leverage in having it work in the background.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
I realize the 10 terminal window thing is not, that's not everyone.
Yeah.
But if you haven't tried running multiple AI jobs at the same time, you should. We'll make what we think is dangerous about that with multitasking clear before the end of the show. But the form factor of 10 windows in front of me, the problem there is that they finish jobs at different times. And so I'm constantly, it's context switching in the extreme, right? Which we know is counterproductive, in aggregate, right? If you put that in Slack, it is much closer to managing a team of people. Right. But I'm not sold on that being the solution because it ultimately comes down to personal discipline in both cases.
Yeah.
Right?
Because then you're just gonna. But let's play this out. Say you do move all your work there, then you're probably just gonna have more Slack
You will have more
notifications.
Slack. Yes, exactly. Right.
Like-
And so
Which was a problem before. We already
yes,
know.
yes, exactly. I mean, to some extent, the physical constraints of how many terminal windows you can fit on your screen on a practical level, especially if you're not using a large Apple display,
Right.
like you're just
Sure.
doing it on a laptop.
Sure.
It's like, okay, there's a point at which this doesn't work. And so there's sort of
Yeah.
a physical limit. In
Well,
Slack,
I've
there's
noticed
no
that,
limit.
that vertical tabs is becoming a thing
Oh,
because
yeah,
of that.
for sure.
Just if you have that problem,
Yes.
you can just
Yes,
flip them.
exactly.
Flip over.
But
But yeah.
the other thing, going back to first principles, is that if you think about people, so good, if we take the 10 windows, 10 tabs,
Right.
and we translate that into Slack, it's like, okay, this is much more like managing a team.
Right.
I think the challenge is that great managers are very rare.
Sure.
Right? And
Yeah.
great managers are extremely good at prioritization. They're
Right.
extremely good at reviewing work and giving feedback. They're extremely good at like limiting, at creating limits, right?
Right.
And so I'm not convinced that moving it into Slack is going to play to
Right.
the natural advantage of people.
The thing that it plays to the advantage of is a theoretical future where long horizon tasks work a lot better
Yes.
because they don't work great right now.
Yep.
Because so you've got a couple employees. If all of your employees could only handle work in chunks of 30 minutes or an hour
Yep.
reliably, you as a manager, like that's a rough job.
Yes. Totally.
Like you,
I think
you
that's
know-
the other thing actually is that
Yeah.
AI is really it is fast, it's getting faster.
Right.
And so if you manage 10 agents like via Slack,
Right.
it's as speed increases, it becomes more problematic, right?
Yeah, yeah. But consider a future where you could give a goal in Slack to one of your AI agents that was a week-long goal, and
Yes.
you check in once a week, then that's very fine.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
even like a whole day. And I know there's some theoretical benchmarks where we're like, sure, it can work on a task for
Yeah,
8
yeah,
hours or whatever. But I don't know many people without any intervention get really great results. You're still measuring that in hours. Like I don't think anybody measures that in days.
Yeah,
at
I
this
agree
point.
with that. I agree with that. And I think that those long horizon tasks are actually a small slice of the pie as far as the day-to-day work that most people are leveraging AI to do.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get practical here at the end. So there's a guy who works for me. He's a writer. We were having this conversation about multitasking, and writing is very much like many things, a process of thinking.
Right.
And so we were going back and forth, just discussing this challenge of, wow, like I can work on 5 blog posts at once. But is that good? Like, is
Right.
that actually helping me do a good
Yeah.
job on all 5 of those at the same time? Because, like, really thinking through a single conceptual piece on a deep level tends to produce a better, blog post or
Right.
whatever we're
Right.
working on. And so I think this is a really practical challenge. We didn't necessarily land on, how do we fix this?
Right.
But I think it goes back. I actually think the answer is not different for like in the AI era than it was previously.
Right.
Right. And the answer is like get good at prioritization
Right.
and limit the amount of work in progress and optimize for maintaining deep focus on
Right.
individual things and getting those done, right?
Right.
So to the point of Scrum, 2 things being done really well is better than 4 things being done at 50 or 75%, right? Like absolutely it is.
Right.
And multitasking, is the enemy of that happening.
Right.
I do think that we will see, and we're already starting to experiment on my team with ways to do this wisely. So if you think about multitasking and you have the 10 windows or 10 tabs open, part of the problem is that those are different, maybe all different projects, but they're in all different stages, right?
Yep.
And so how do you sequence these things in a way that is wise, right? So like, okay, background research is great. Do I need 5 of those running at the same time, and then pinging me when they're done? Or, how does that work?
Right.
How do you sequence that work? And so I will run multiple research jobs in the background, but I don't have that all in front of me, and then I will intentionally switch context to a single result and say, okay, I'm going to review this, right?
Right.
And so I think it just really comes back to prioritization and personal discipline and maintaining focus. If you do that, I think you can leverage AI's ability to run multiple jobs at the same time in a really powerful way.
Well, and you have this pattern emerging too, where people are doing this fan out thing. So say you run 20 research jobs, and then AI fans out to 20, fans back into 1, and then you look at one output. Like there's creative ways to do it to still get the like multiple context, agent workflow, but you not have to interact with all 20 things.
100%. I think the other thing that I would really encourage people to think about, and I'm saying this to myself as well, because you can do so much simultaneously with AI, it sort of sets as baseline expectation of how quickly things can happen, right? So it's like, well, I can do hours of research. I mean, I just ran some numbers on a project that I did, and I think I saved 2 weeks of total time across, however long this project was.
Right.
6 or 8 weeks of just research, right? That I would have had to do manually. And so you start to get this expectation of like, well, wow, things can happen really quickly, right? But reviewing research or like producing a good piece of work is still slow. Like it still takes time to do those things. And so I think that I'm also having to reset my own expectations, because you can naturally get to a place where like literally everything is faster. And it's like, no, only parts of the process are faster, and it is dramatic, but being a craftsperson is still tedious and time consuming.
And that part might be a bit slower, because if you'd manually done the research, you're building internal context, then you're actually going to be a little faster when you sit down to write. So you actually probably hurt your speed a little bit on that stuff.
Agreed. All right, so turn notifications off. Be wise about how you deploy multiple AI jobs at the same time. Focus on deep work in your craft.
Couldn't have said it better.
All right, we'll catch you on the next show.